was to counter the disease of belief in being that we preached non-being. If the disease of belief in being vanishes, the medicine of emptiness is also useless. Thus we know that the way of the sage has never held to either being or non-being. What obstacle can there be then?
The nature and value of the text. Nagarjuna's 12 Gate Treatise was a principal document in the San-lun tradition for centuries and was also accepted as canonical literature by many other schools. But because it exists only in Chinese translation, modem Western scholars have seldom studied the 12 Gate Treatise. Recently a few have questioned the authenticity of the three treatises, and doubted if they are Nagarjuna's and Aryadeva's work. Contemporary Madhyamika scholars accept the Prasannapada of Candrakirti as the authentic ülamadhyamakarika of Nagarjuna. It seems that if the Prasannapada is genuine, then the Middle Treatise is also authentic, because the two are almost identical. Since both the main verses and commentaries of the 12 Gate Treatise resemble the main verses of the Middle Treatise in their philosophical reasoning, religious assertion, and literary style, the 12 Gate Treatise is most likely an authentic Nagarjuna book. The Middle Treatise was written before the 12 Gate Treatise, as can be seen by the fact that the Middle Treatise is mentioned several times in the 12 Gate. In examining the issues of being and non-being, the 12 Gate Treatise states, this has been discussed in the Middle Treatise. And in analyzing the notion of a maker, the 12 Gate Treatise mentions, as it has been written in the Middle Treatise. Now, since the Middle Treatise was written first and the two works are similar, one may ask why Nagarjuna wrote the 12 Gate Treatise at all. Why did San-lun masters insist that one should study the book? Several purposes and reasons can be offered.
The 12 Gate Treatise provides a concise account of Nagarjuna's thought. In a sense it is a simple crystallization of his main teachings in the Middle Treatise. The Middle Treatise was written primarily for Hinayana Buddhists, while the 12 Gate Treatise was presented for non-Buddhists as well as Buddhists. The 12 Gate Treatise discusses certain important religious and philosophical issues which the Middle Treatise does not touch on. The 12 Gate Treatise clarifies certain problems which the Middle Treatise does not explain clearly. Nagarjuna's Madhyamikakarika has chapters and consists of verses, or verses in the Prasannapada version. It seems to have been too much for ordinary laymen and even many professional monks to study. In order to make Buddhism easier to understand, a brief but comprehensive presentation of Buddhist thought was needed. The 12 Gate Treatise, which has only verses, seems to have fit the need. Nagarjuna opened the book with these words.
Now I shall briefly explain the teachings of Mahayanism. Question: Mahayana teachings are too many to be counted. Even the sayings of the Buddha alone cannot be exhausted. How can you explain and expound them all? Answer: because of this, I said at the beginning, this would be a brief explanation. In expounding the doctrine of emptiness, the Middle Treatise discusses 8 negations or the eightfold negation of the middle way, namely, no origination, no extinction, no permanence, no impermanence, no identity, no differentiation, no coming, no departure. But the 12 Gate Treatise chooses the first negation and concentrates its argument on the concept of origination or production. Instead of spending time examining the other 7 negations, the entire treatise aims at showing that all things have no production, therefore all things are ultimately empty and tranquil.
The presentation of Buddhist thought in the 12 Gate Treatise is simple and yet comprehensive enough to lead people to know the central message of Buddhism. So Nagarjuna told readers, to explain emptiness and enter into its meaning one should use the 12 Gate. It seems that if one studies the 12 Gate Treatise first, it is easier to understand Madhyamika teachings in the other treatises. Perhaps this is why Komarjiva translated the 12 Gate Treatise into Chinese first, then the Middle Treatise. Although both treatises argue for the doctrine of emptiness, the aim of Nagarjuna's criticism in the Middle Treatise is mainly to refute Hinayana philosophy, and to this end it examines in detail the concepts of the 6 sense faculties, 5 skandhas, 6 datas and passions. The aim of the criticism in the 12 Gate Treatise is to refute both Anatman and Atman traditions. It tries to achieve this goal by analyzing the concepts of nature, mark and function, and demonstrating that all things, whether Atman or Anatman, substance or elements, are devoid of nature, mark and function. Unlike the Middle Treatise, the 12 Gate Treatise devotes comparatively little effort to a discussion of Hinayana issues, such as the skandhas, datas and passions, but it deals with common mistakes of Hinayana and non-Buddhist philosophies.
According to the Madhyamika, a central mistake made by Buddhist and non-Buddhist metaphysicians is that they fail to see that nature, mark and function cannot be established, and hence falsely assert the reality or existence of things. The Madhyamika argues that if people know that nature, mark and function cannot be established, they will not make ontological commitments. The reasoning is quite simple. For a thing to be real or to exist, it must have a certain nature, mark or function. The Madhyamika shows that nature, mark and function cannot be established. Thus, for the Madhyamika, to know that nature, mark and function are empty is the same as knowing that all things are empty. This is one of the main points brought out in the 12 Gate Treatise. As Nagarjuna examined the concepts of nature, mark and function in the 12 Gate Treatise, he also discussed certain important religious and philosophical issues which he did not examine in other works. One of these issues is the problem of the existence of God. Nagarjuna not only ruled out God's existence as the creator of the universe, but also repudiated the concept of God as the savior of mankind. Religious men often think of God as a savior. Our fate, destiny and happiness are controlled by him. If we surrender to him, he will redeem us from sin and give us happiness. Without God's grace, salvation is impossible. Nagarjuna attacked these ideas and argued that we have certain self-making powers, such as controlling our passions and behavior so as to produce good and avoid evil. If salvation is only from God, it would destroy the principle of the world, namely, that men do good and obtain reward, and do evil and receive punishment. One would not need to be mindful, for good deeds might not produce good reward, while evil could bring about salvation. Since this is absurd, salvation cannot be dependent upon God's grace. If God is the sole source of salvation, religious discipline would be of no use. Yet this is not the case, and therefore God cannot be the sole source of salvation.
Another important issue discussed in the 12 Gate Treatise is whether the principle of causality can be proved empirically. People usually believe it can, and the uniformity of causal law is considered an inductive inference. We observe a constant conjunction of causes and effects that justifies the principle that similar causes produce similar effects. However, Nagarjuna argued that the principle of causality cannot be proved empirically. The constant conjunction of events in the past does not guarantee that similar events will produce similar effects unless we assume that similar causes produce similar effects. The empirical justification of the causal principle is really based upon the very principle which we attempt to prove. Sometimes Nagarjuna did not present his viewpoint clearly in the Middle Treatise, and scholars have been perplexed about his position. For instance, in chapter 26 of the Middle Treatise he described the 12 chains of causal conditions. All sentient beings are deluded by ignorance and hence have caused 3 kinds of action. Since various actions arise, the sentient beings go through 6 forms of life. Since it is conditioned by various kinds of action, the consciousness establishes itself with respect to 6 forms of life. Since consciousness is established, name and form are instilled.